remains of an individual, the skull is familiar, but then the hands are in this pugilistic position, but it's actually bones, and the rest of the body up to the legs is ash.
You know, up to now, actually, Uko's skull was still held at Guy's Hospital in London.
Oyugi died. You know, even Saitot was about to die.
What room has no doors or windows?
I think it's a staff room because it has more things occupied.
I think it's an egg because it doesn't have any openings.
And you're beautiful just the way you are.
So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef.
So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef.
So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef.
He's action-packed and sister challenge. Dookie dog for living large. Triple cloning. T-Rexing. Royal throning. Johnny Xing. You never know what's coming next. Cause it's Johnny.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Midundo mitamu vinandana tarumbeta, yote vesikika akipigiwa Maria. Midundo mitamu vinandana tarumbeta, yote vesikika akipigiwa Maria. Leo twakushangilia tukiwa nayo furaha. Salamu Maria, mama wa huruma, twakushangilia.
To get Midundo Mitamu by St. Raphael Benedictine, dial star 811 star 937 hash. Skiza, Na Nation.
Siku yetu imefika, hakuna tayezuia.
Valentine's is around the corner.
And this week on Crossover, we take time to celebrate love with you.
So make sure you catch the conversation because we shall be having special guests in studio. I'm gonna be playing you your favorite love jam.
Absolutely, come through with your messages for your loved ones and join us this Sunday from 11:30 to 1 p.m. only on MTV. And this is Crossover.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
NTV, turning on your world.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to AM Live this Friday, and as is our custom, we get the youth perspective on recent political events, including the said bogeymen who raided former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i's home. In fact, that kicks us off this morning, and the security firm guarding the barrier of Karen Ngong View Estate have declined to divulge details on whether indeed police officers were seen to have gained access to the former Interior Cabinet Secretary's home. A cloud of mystery surrounds the incident, even as the National Police Service, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions distance themselves from the raid. The burden of proof now lies with Matiang'i as the government alleges malice on the part of the former CS. With that is NTV's Melita Oletenges.
Dunstan comes outside to talk.
The puzzle of whether the National Police Service raided former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i's home in Karen on the night of 8th February or not still lingers as the National Police Service, through the Inspector General of Police Japheth Koome and the EACC through the Chief Executive Officer Twalib Mbarak, have denied being involved in the raid. Speaking to journalists this evening, the Director of Criminal Investigations, Mohammed Amin, has cited foul play in the incident, saying that preliminary investigations indicate that Matiang'i, his lawyers and former Premier Raila Odinga were conducting theatrics.
Dr. Matiang'i informed his guards, some already interviewed by the DCI, that he was expecting guests who were lawyers and instructed them to grant access to his home upon their arrival. The lawyers arrived shortly after and proceeded to a meeting inside the house of Dr. Fred Matiang'i. They were later joined afterwards by politicians led by none other than the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga.
Speaking to NTV on phone, Dunstan Omari, Matiang'i's lead lawyer, said that the police should provide the public with CCTV footage indicating movement of police officers in Karen last night and not rely on Matiang'i to prove his case. We sought to establish whether indeed police officers gained access to Matiang'i's home, with our lead being the private security firm which guards the barrier leading to Matiang'i's home at the Karen View Estate. The guards could neither confirm nor deny whether they allowed the police or an unknown vehicle entry into the compound, refusing to speak to members of the press or divulging registration details. This leaves Fred Matiang'i with the burden of proof, as security agencies have denied conducting a raid and could not be placed at Matiang'i's compound, but instead only lawyers and journalists.
The former CS for Interior was invaded with a garrison or a battalion of unidentified people from the security apparatus of this country, either EACC, either KWS, either the police. We were summoned immediately.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki, in a statement, has also denied going after his predecessor, indicating that no security agency was involved and that the country's security apparatus remains apolitical and focused on solving security challenges. A section of leaders have termed the incident as a circus bearing ill motive.
We just want to let Kenyans know that this was a poorly scripted drama last night, whose architects and scripters and poor directors only wanted to invoke public emotions and incite Kenyans. And this is following the dwindling support of their subversive activities in political rallies around the country, especially by the political class.
The incident, which gained national attention and uproar on social media, has seen many Kenyans call on Fred Matiang'i to provide proof that indeed he was raided at his home and that it wasn't a bluff. Melita Oletenges, NTV.
In his quest to seek anticipatory bail and battled, former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i now finds himself at loggerheads with the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nuruddin Haji, who is threatening to sue the former Cabinet Secretary. In his affidavit, Matiang'i appeared to insinuate that the plan to arrest him was hatched in Mombasa during the Africa Prosecutors Conference. Here is NTV's Sydney Chazima with more from Matiang'i's 14-page affidavit.
Former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i could have placed himself on the firing end of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nuruddin Haji. This is after claiming in his affidavit presented.
Let him table that evidence.
In the affidavit, Matiang'i adds that he got wind of a plot to arrest him and arraign him in court, a move he claims is politically motivated. The DPP has also joined voices with the heads of the country's security apparatus, denying the claims.
There were no such elite squads. And I think I'll also ask you guys to give us the photos of those so-called elite squads who are there. Sure.
Matiang'i, who has not more than once been accused of ignoring court orders during his tenure as Interior CS, also claims that he has never been summoned to appear before any police station or investigative agency, adding that he is shocked why he is being sought for arrest. But Nuruddin adds that there could be a case against Matiang'i in the pipeline.
I think you know, for a long time, it's the media that has been even asking about the Ruaraka land issue. We are awaiting finalization of the financial investigations. Once that is ready, then we will make the appropriate decisions.
Matiang'i also believes that his speech during his visit to the late Professor George Magoha's home.
We live in a country where people are so dishonest, they love lies, they behave as if there was nothing happening yesterday. They are lecturing us now about things they think they are new.
Could have triggered the scaling down of his security detail and the ensuing arrest attempts. The former powerful CS, an open critic of anticipatory bails.
You prepare to commit a crime, then you go to court and come up with an anticipatory order. We are hearing it's an invention in Kenya's judicial system, an anticipatory order. So you can't be arrested. So you go, get the order, and arrive here, and go and break into Honorable Mujiri's house. You have an order. You anticipated that you're going to make a mistake.
Now breathes a sigh of relief after the courts granted his request for anticipatory bail by way of a personal bond of 200,000 shillings, in essence, shielding him from any arrests. Sydney Chazima, NTV.
In an explosive statement that seemed to throw former DCI boss George Kinoti under the bus, Director of Public Prosecutions Nuruddin Haji is now claiming that about 10 cases involving billions of shillings that have collapsed in the last few months were built flimsily. Haji claims that his office received falsified affidavits from the DCI in cases that targeted individuals accused of illegally acquiring public funds, most of which have been withdrawn from court. Haji was responding to accusations of acting on coercion to withdraw cases of tax evasion, including that of business persons Mary Wambui, Humphrey Kariuki and Anthony Mwaura, among others.
The person who was involved in the investigations was misleading us. The facts that he presented were not the true facts. And as I said, for example, the ODPP does not have the expertise to examine documents. It is the DCI officers. And once they present it, we have to believe that this person is an expert. And we have to rely on his expertise. It is unfortunate that now this is happening. And you know the import of that in the criminal justice system? That now we have to review each and every case because we don't know whether really the person who has been brought to court is guilty or not. But nobody is bothered to ask those people who were involved at that time in investigations. All they are focusing on is the ODPP. But let me tell you, I stand by my decision, and there's a very transparent process that takes place here, and I have no apologies to make.
The number of Kenyans facing starvation has increased by a whopping 1 million in just 1 month to cross the 5 million mark in 31 counties. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua says that while Africa is experiencing extreme effects of climate change, the international community has failed in developing and adhering to a climate change framework. By December last year, the National Drought Management Authority reported 4.35 million Kenyans were food insecure. With that report is Bridget's Ghana.
More Kenyans are facing hunger as the number of counties classified to be in the critical phase of the drought rises to 31. Kenya, along with her Horn of Africa neighbors, is experiencing the driest spell in 40 years, with nearly 1 million children and lactating mothers being malnourished.
Kenya has consecutively missed 5 rain seasons. We are deep into the longest drought in 4 decades. As a result, more than 5 million Kenyans are facing starvation in 31 counties across the country, where livelihoods worth $1.5 million have been lost in the last 1 year.
The pain of the drought being exacerbated by the failure of the October to December short rains, and Kenyans in the affected counties are feeling the pinch, especially in the preliminary 23 arid and semi-arid counties.
Mwenye angechiweza kulima akupata last year, sasa tunasema kila moja kuna mvua, iko na njaa na shida tena ni maji. Hiyo vitu ni mbili. Maji kabisa hakuna, even hata wale wanaishi within the town, saa hii watu wanalala mtoni.
Kwa hali ya njaa, hakika chakula, kwa hali ya njaa watu wako na njaa. Si 5 milioni tu vile Kenya inavyosema. Ukitazama Baringo yenyewe, 3/4 ya watu hawana vyakula.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua says the lack of a binding international protocol on climate change is to blame in part for the climate-related challenges that developing countries are facing.
There is no respite despite various international commitments and frameworks against climate change. For instance, increased global warming means we have fallen short of implementing the UN framework conventions on climate change of 1992. We have also neither adhered to the Kyoto Protocol of 1997 nor the Paris Agreement of 2015, just to mention but a few.
The National Steering Committee on Drought Response has raised 650 million shillings towards drought mitigation in the country, with the media pledging its support to the fund's drive to feed the hungry Kenyans.
Media is the closest to Kenyans. The media will play the role of highlighting the plight of Kenyans across the country. You will go around and you'll tell us where these issues.
More than 16,000 households have been reached in the drought intervention measures of relief food, cash transfers, screening and treatment for malnutrition, water tracking, provision of livestock feeds and livestock offtake. Bridget's Ghana, NTV, Nakuru.
The Orange Democratic Movement kicked off its 2-day retreat with the process of deregistering and expelling 7 members of Parliament and 1 senator who met President William Ruto at State House, Nairobi on Tuesday. ODM party leader Raila Odinga has termed them traitors. Odinga says Azimio legislators who've pledged to work with Ruto's government without permission from the coalition should resign immediately. NTV's political affairs reporter Vincent Odur witnessed the drama.
Azimio members of parliament have camped in Machakos County for a 2-day retreat at Manzoni Lodge. However, those deemed to have betrayed the cause of the coalition, like Langata MP Felix Odiwuor Jalango, found it rough accessing the meeting. There was a push and pull as a group of youth tried to stop him. Even though he later managed to get into the meeting, he was ordered out the moment Azimio leader Raila Odinga arrived.
When Baba walked in, one of his close security asked me to walk out. And that's what happened. I walked out. Yes.
How do you feel? How does that make you feel?
I feel bad because, you know, I love Baba. I'm a member of ODM. And I really feel bad. Yes. I can't regret meeting President because I'd gone there as my own capacity. And it's because he had called me for development issues.
Jalango is among a section of Luo Nyanza legislators who met President William Ruto on Tuesday at State House. These came few days after another 30 Jubilee Party MPs also met the President at State House, despite being members of Azimio, and pledged to work with his government at a time when Odinga has intensified his campaign against William Ruto's presidency. Odinga has accused the MPs of betrayal.
The work of politicians is to politic, and politics is development. And that's why there's no need for politicians to go and beg the executive for development. That is a right of the people of Kenya.
Kalonzo Musyoka's effort to ask for tolerance on the rebel MPs was met with a unanimous rejection.
But imagine the state of mind poor Jalango is in. Because Kibra now is his hostile ground. You know, you are supposed to enjoy your tour of duty as an MP for your constituency.
Akija kwako, represent the people. You can't move from there. But when you go out there looking for him and looking for photoshops, I don't know whether it is not very useful.
The former Prime Minister sought to end divisions among the ranks of the party and denied accusations that he has been giving mixed signals on how to treat President Ruto.
So I want you to know that the report in the IBC whistleblower is authentic report, authentic information. It shows that at 245 constituencies, Mr. William Ruto got 4.6 million votes, and we got 7.1 million votes. If you add the 45 which were not transmitted electronically.
The Azimio leaders have vowed to continue with their political rallies to reject Ruto's government and salvage what they have termed as their stolen 2022 presidential victory. The Azimio political brigade will hold its fourth public rally in Mavoko here in Machakos County before heading to Busia on Sunday and Kisii on Monday. Vincent Odur, NTV in Machakos County.
Politics and development are intertwined like two mating dogs. That's what Raila Odinga had to say yesterday. I wonder what you think. Former Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha's wife, Dr. Odudu Barbara Magoha, yesterday revealed that her husband collapsed 4 times in a span of 2 hours before he died. Speaking at his Requiem Mass at the Consolata Shrine in Westlands, Nairobi, Barbara stated that her husband performed his surgery duties up to the last minute as she brought mourners to tears by recalling how she turned from a missus to a widow in just 2 hours. Among the notable leaders present included Raphael Tuju, Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Mashogu, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndongo, PS Belio Kipsang, ex-CSs Farida Karone and Amina Mohammed. George Magoha was eulogized as a hardworking, no-nonsense individual. Friends and colleagues remembered him as such.
All through my life, if I ever needed my dad, don't worry, I'm okay. He would want me to do this alone. He was available. It didn't matter if he was a surgeon, if he was a cabinet secretary, and that's because he believed in family, and it was always the same. One phone call, if he can talk, he talks immediately. If he can't talk, immediately he finishes, he would come to me.
He looked over my back and I looked over his. In marriage, we all know there's nothing like 50-50. There's always one person sacrificing more than the other. It could be 40, 70, but everything just came to 100. We understood that. And as a couple, we worked through that.
All right, let's take a look at the news diary now. And President William Ruto is scheduled to meet governors at a retreat in Naivasha. Azimio Parliamentary Group meeting goes into day 2 in Machakos. They're also expected to hold a rally. And Azimio, that is a rally in Mavoko. And Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki is scheduled to hold a security meeting in the Rift Valley. And finally, Professor George Magoha's body will be ferried to Yala. All right, now we get into the dailies, and I review it this morning with no stranger. One is known as Kidi Mwaga, who is a governance and policy expert, and he'll be lending us his expertise this morning. Good to see you, Kidi. And joining him is a guy called Advice, who is the Youth League chairperson, Jubilee. Yes. All right, so Advice Mundalo will be lending us some advice, or lending the subject of our conversation this morning some advice, the subjects. So good to have you in studio, gentlemen. All right, let's get into the dailies now. Before we get into the Standard, let's start with the Daily Nation front page. Big picture, big image there of Fred Matiang'i, and the question is, who's fooling whom? Former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, who yesterday obtained anticipatory bail, maintains police raided his Karen home on Wednesday night. The government and security agencies have distanced themselves from any such operation, but DCI admits ongoing investigations. Was it a police cock-up? Was it stage managed? Who was behind it, and for what reason? Those questions interrogated in deeper fashion on pages 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation. Scrolling to the very top here, I see Raila Odinga. Raila rallies to take on high food prices. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party leader Raila Odinga is from next month set to start countrywide rallies beginning in Nairobi over the high cost of living, high taxes and the tough economic times facing Kenyans. While addressing MPs from the coalition during a parliamentary group meeting attended by 123 lawmakers at Manzoni Lodge in Masako yesterday, he maintained that he does not recognize President William Ruto, adding that Kenyans are suffering under a, quote, illegitimate regime. I'm curious to hear what my panelists have to say on the subject. Now, as all this politicking is going on, we see here dry spell and doing short rain gains. Last year, short rains had an insignificant impact on the ongoing drought in the country, except in 2 arid and semi-arid lands. The National Steering Committee on Drought Response said yesterday, as it urged Kenyans to chip in. And for employees, higher NSSF rates take force this month. Workers and employers will start feeling the impact of new pension contribution rates this month after the National Social Security Fund asked employers to comply with the law, raising monthly contributions immediately. All right, front page of the Business Daily. Zooming in. Front page reads, I beg your pardon. Let me zoom out a little bit so that it is clearer and we don't cut off any text. Nigeria techie in Nairobi for seized billions CBK permit. This report by Adonijah Ndege, the CEO and co-founder of Nigerian payments company Flutterwave, flew into Kenya this week amid efforts to unfreeze his 6.6 billion shillings and lift a Central Bank of Kenya embargo on the firm. And I see at the bottom here, 19 mega projects hit as 66.8 billion shillings. China foreign loans cut. This is by Dominic Omondi. At least 19 major projects have taken a hit from tweaks in government spending after foreign lenders cut funding for the year ending June by at least 66.8 billion. Roads and energy infrastructure projects are the most affected by the funding cutbacks by global financiers such as the World Bank and the Africa Development Bank, forcing President William Ruto's government to shelve or delay their construction. Some of those projects are detailed here. The Kamburu Embu Thika transmission line, for example, has been docked 4.5 billion shillings, one of the largest cuts from Chinese lender, the China Exim Bank. The construction of The 1,045 500 kV high voltage direct current transmission line that seeks to connect Kenya and Ethiopia grids, known as the Eastern Electricity Highway Project, has lost 3.15 3.15 billion from the AFDB, Africa Development Bank. The World Bank funding for a project that seeks to increase power access through cutting construction charges has shrunk by 2.9 billion shillings, while the Gilgil Thika Konza 400 kV transmission line lost 2.3 billion. Kenya has been relying on foreign loans to upgrade existing power lines and increase the supply and quality of electricity to meet a surge in demand. All right, I believe I will leave. No, let's take a look at the ticker. Kenya-Tanzania court cases block 11 tons of GMO maize seeds. 4 court cases have blocked the release of 11 tons of genetically modified maize seed that were to be made available to farmers this planting season. Treasury slashes 10 billion from KQ bailout. The National Treasury has slashed 10 billion shillings in support to Kenya Airways as the Exchequer begins unwinding bailouts to the company. And February bond underperforms. Investors go for T-bills. The government raised just a third of its target, that is 50 billion shillings in the February Treasury bond sale, with investors instead preferring to pump funds into short-term Treasury bills on expectations that interest rates will soon go up. So that is pretty much all that is on the front page of the Business Daily. Let's take a look at the Taifa Leo before we get into the Standard and the Star. Taifa Leo reads as such, that is the headline story. Again, image of Fred Matiang'i there. Nani alivamia Matiang'i is the question. Utata waibuka baada ya Inspector Generali kukanusha ufahamu wa uvamizi kwa Matiang'i. And that is Fred Matiang'i there. It's accompanied by this caption: maswali yameibuka kuhusu uvamizi uliodaiwa kufanywa na polisi katika makazi ya aliyekuwa waziri wa usalama wa ndani Dr. Fred Matiang'i mnamo Jumatano, siku baada ya idara zote za usalama na uchunguzi kukana kuhusika. Kupitia mawakili wake, Dr. Matiang'i alidai kwamba maafisa wa polisi kutoka kikosi maalum walivamia na kuzingira nyumba yake kwa lengo la kumkamata. So more on that on page 2 of the Taifa Leo. Let's take a look at the Standard. I saw a picture of the very same gentleman there, and that is Fred Matiang'i in a prayerful pose. The Matiang'i siege, where lies the truth? On Wednesday night, former Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i called his lawyers, Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga, and the media to his house to forestall a, quote, impending operation. And yesterday, the Police and Interior Ministry denied that there had been any such action against the former CS. We set to find out what exactly happened. And these two stories actually inform our conversation, and they're back to back on the front page of the Standard. Traitors, Raila on the warpath with rebels. MPs from Azimio meeting the Kenya Kwanza regime without permission are betraying the people and should resign and seek fresh mandate. An image of Jalango there, Felix Odiwar, who is the Member of Parliament for Langata, who was asked to leave the parliamentary group meeting that kicked off yesterday. Front page of the Star, before I ask my panelists to weigh in. This is what the headline story reads like. Puzzle of Matiang'i's Night House raid. Looks like pretty much all the dailies are asking the same question, Kidi Mwaga. Where does the truth lie? All right, so puzzle of Matiang'i's Night House raid. Former CS has obtained a court injunction to stop any plans to arrest him. And I see here 10 suspects linked to 449 million shilling Fuliza fraud detained till Monday. More of that in the Star. All right, we've also been joined by Omulo Jr. in studio. He is the Director of Political Affairs, ANC. Good to see you guys. As I load up my Twitter, I'll start with this, the scramble to kiss the ring. And there's a quote here: MPs from Azimio meeting the Kenya Kwanza regime without permission are betraying the people and should resign and seek fresh mandate. What do you make of that, Kidi Mwaga? Should they resign? should they seek a fresh mandate?
There is a strict observance of the law, and the strict observance of the law is that if you act in a manner likely to suggest that you have abandoned your party, or you are advancing the position of the opposition party, your opponents, then the law is you should resign. However, in this case, I am still at a loss to understand that what exactly is the offense here in saying an MP showing up at State House to have a conversation with the president. We have public officers, ministers, cabinet secretaries, et al. And you realize that they are visited by people from across the political divide. So I am left here wondering if, as an MP, now you lose the right to say engage public officers like the president. Let me say this, that for the past 12 hours or so, I have been wondering if we missed a bullet as a country. Why would I say that we missed a bullet? Because the level of overzealousness that we have seen with the matter of the 7 MPs who went to visit, the 6 MPs and the senator who went to visit the president, is disproportionate. And we are wondering if this is the level of overzealousness we would have seen if this team had formed the government. Thank you.
All right, and I've managed to pull up my Twitter. I see Jalas tweeted about 9 hours ago that ipo siku. All right.
Yes, and I agree with Jalango. And let me say why. A story is told of a young man who was threatened with detention by some king. And the young man was in his 20s, while the king was in his 70s. So the young man told the king that even if you were to detain me for 20 years, I would still come out and eat bananas on your grave. So I think Jalango has got the advantage of age, and therefore ipo siku. Thank you.
Advice? What do you think? What's your response to that quote, or quote of Raila Odinga's? MPs from Azimio meeting the Kenya Kwanza regime without permission are betraying the people and should resign and seek fresh mandate. Kidi Mwaga says nonsense. What say you?
I think we have to look at this thing from both sides of the coin. One, we have to really understand what the Right Honorable Raila Odinga means by permission. Because there was a time, and I think that this was in less than a month ago, when the president was in Nyanza and all these MPs were there to welcome the president, and there was no outburst about this. Now, there should be no problem with leaders having a meeting. Members of parliament, the president, all of them are elected by the same people. And therefore, it should be possible that they can actually be able to consult. But the problem that is there in Kenya today is that most of these are not consultations, but it's actually political whipping. So we are looking at a position whereby we are heading into the government trying to muzzle opposition in all manner. And remember, the president actually rightfully said in the beginning of his term that he wants a very active opposition. But what the president is also doing is to muzzle that same opposition, that there is no opposition at all. So I think that is now where we get into a bit of a confusion. And then for the tribulations of Jalango, I don't think per se people had quite a big problem with Jalango going to State House, but him coming out and chest thumping about it and saying he would have still done the same thing even if Raila Odinga was to tell him not to do that. I think that is what angered the ODM fraternity, because he came out more like to disrespect his own party leader. And I think that is why this purge, you can see it's not happening to most of the other 7 that were with him. It is perfectly within him alone. It's like he's the one on target. I think it's because he has come out more or less to say he's chest thumping about it, more or less to say that I don't care whether Raila Odinga told me to go or not, I would have still gone. And this was for development. And remember, Olive, development is one word that is being used to whip political alignments, because members of parliament do not necessarily need the president for them to orchestrate development in their areas, because members of parliament have a constitutional office. They are part and parcel of the government. There is, I don't know why we keep thinking that when you are a member of parliament, you need to keep sitting with the president for you to be in government. This government has 3 arms. The president is the head of the executive, and members of parliament are the legislative arm of government. If we do not have them keeping the government under in check, then we wonder then who is actually legislating for this country. So I do not agree with members of parliament when they say that that they are meeting the president because of developmental reasons. Members of parliament like Babu Owino have been able to develop Embakasi East, but we have not been seeing them having constant meetings with the president. But be that as it may, we should also not paint a picture as though elected leaders in Kenya are not supposed to interact, they are not supposed to meet. But the bigger problem is these meetings are political whippings. Okay. We are seeing them going there not just to consult on what is the so-called development, but it's actually to whip people towards the Kenya Kwanza side of government, and that's where the problem is.
All right, I think Jalongo's case maybe is perhaps the most visible,
Yes.
but I did see a letter written, a petition to ODM to eject the others who are with Jalas as well from the ODM. But Omolo, I'd like to bring you in at this point. Here is a tweet of Edwin Sifunas. As a taxpayer, you are not required to beg for development, just like government doesn't call you to State House when taxing you. Likewise, you don't need a meeting there to get development. It is your right. These State House visitors are being dishonest, but you already knew that. And then he continues to say, it would be interesting to get a list of the, quote, development discussed from each member who went to State House so that the electorate can follow up on implementation. And he continues to say, I have a fairly famous uncle. Even during the tough Nyayo era, he and 6 other MPs stood firm in defense of the people and what was right. Just 7 people with beards and a resolve. In these things, it's never about quantity, it's about quality. Those are his views. Omulo, we've seen, or rather we've had advice say that these State House meetings really are not about development, but more about political mobilization. What say you?
First and foremost, thank you, Olive, for inviting me here. But the first things first. The cardinal principle of politics about loyalty is that loyalty is rewarded in installment and progressively, and disloyalty is punished instantly. The purported disloyalty by these leaders is neither here nor there. When leaders are campaigning, they are campaigning on the basis of development. They are telling their people, this is what I will do, this is the agenda. They are not campaigning to picket or to go to the street or to take their people in that route. That is why they have a responsibility to represent, to oversight, and also to legislate. William Samoei Ruto, who is the President of the Republic of Kenya, was voted by millions of Kenyans. He's also a leader. And we should reach a level in this country, in democracy, whereby when you are elected, despite of your political party, you can interact and associate with other leaders without barriers or even informing other leaders, so long as you have not defected from your party. I think this is a dictatorship that is existing in ODM for years, and leaders are being intimidated just by interacting with the president. You see, sometimes you need to lobby. I think advice is just saying that because he has not gotten an opportunity to get elected to parliament. But that time when I know, which I know he will be elected one day in the near future, he will, the first thing he will do to his people, he will lobby for development. He will create an environment for his people to tap into the opportunity that are brought by the national government. So Jalango is right. When you are going to lobby for government development, it does not mean that you are going to beg or you have defected from the party. So whatever that happened or whatever Sifuna is doing is the political is a step that they're taking us in 20 years back, where there was a democracy of dictatorship. We have come from there, and multipartyism came in 1992. We have progressed well, and we can now count the milestone of democracy. So I'm just begging the opposition leader that he should embrace, first of all, democracy in ODM before it start discussing democracy in the whole country. So it's very unfortunate. Jalango is still young, and the future is luminous. I think Jalango will make a great leader. If I were, in fact, if I was in his shoes, I would have resigned, or maybe faced off with Raila Odinga, because he should protect his people, those who elected him in Langata. He should not shy away from protecting his people or even representing his people. So he's just doing what is meant for him as a leader, and we support him as Kenyans.
All right, Umulo says Jalas's future is luminous. Kidi, we need to take a break. When we come back, when people elect a certain individual,
yes,
sometimes they vote the party, they don't even vote the person. So is Jalas betraying those who voted for him? No, on the other side of this break.
They call February a month of love.
I'm single, I'm happy and proudly 40.
I am single, but kuna mali nimekelea deposit.
But I believe love is a decision that you make.
Well, we plan on what we wanted to show them, but we were not open about what is happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. The girlfriend whom I was dating was also dating my brother.
Kuna vile tu chungu na kurudishanga. God, yani. To your past life. True.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Johannesburg is a very big city.
He's a financial consultant, an author, writer, and renowned publisher whose publications have been bestsellers in the market.
I always had that hunger to be in that publishing space.
Yes, on Daring Abroad this week, Rotok Chesaina shares his 22-year journey in South Africa.
You can make money from writing books.
Also on the show, how Kenyans in the diaspora are investing back home through tailor-made opportunities by Kimisitu Sacco, and what it means for the country.
We are present in 56 counties of the world, so that means we're able to serve our members all over the world.
One thing I like about Kimisitu Sacco is the staff. When I was in China, I could still communicate with them and they would get back.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
February is the month of love, and this February we've got an amazing activity for all the singles who are ready to mingle. It's going to be an afternoon full of good vibes and awesome activities from speed dating, sip and paint, charades, karaoke, and so much more. Get to enjoy live music from Hard the Band. Catch the Season 3 Episode 1 live recording of the Joyrides podcast. Mark your calendars for February 18th right here at Anzana Gardens from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Get your tickets on Kenya Buzz today. That's www.kenyabuzz.com. XOXO, get ready to mingle.
She's my lover, she's my lover.
On this week's episode,
I'm here to see one of the most recognizable faces in dance.
We follow a movement that's all about movement.
We were ranked one of the best slow-mo kings in Africa.
We discover where persistence can take you.
I was still not paid well,
Yes.
but I ended up doing that job.
And you never know when the beat will drop.
I give the dance queen in more than only one dance queen, guys.
On the best of urban dancers.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya. Claiming your assets is easy. Simply visit UFAA website www.ufaa.go.ke or dial *361# or visit Huduma Center near you.
You know, I'm just scrolling through your comments and there are so many to deal with the Matiang'i, that are responding to the quote, Matiang'i raid, police raid on Matiang'i's home. Just a reminder of our topic this morning, and if you're just joining us, just to introduce you to our guests. Today's topic is tales or topics, because there are two-pronged. Tales of bogeymen and scramble to kiss the ring. We started with the second, the scramble to kiss the ring. With us in studio is Mundalo Advice. At the end, the middle M stands for, if you're willing to share?
Mulembe.
Mulembe.
Yeah, that's lawyer for peace.
Oh, okay. All right. Peace. Oh, interesting names there. Advice and peace. We have Amulo Jr. as well as Kidi Waga. Dennis Mbanda, unfortunately, traveled from Bondo, got to Nairobi rather late and won't be able to join us this morning. But Kidi, this is a question I asked before we went on break, and the question is this. There are those who voted for Jalas based on the fact that he was contesting on an ODM ticket. Has he betrayed those voters?
I don't think so. Why would I say so? Is that in 92, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga was elected on Ford Kenya ticket. In 96, he was elected on NDP ticket. In 97. In 2002, he was elected on LDP ticket. So people elect people. Voters elect leaders, not the other way around. There are exceptional instances where a party has had a euphoria. But it must be remembered that in 2017, there was ODM. But then the people of Langata, in their infinite wisdom, decided to elect a gentleman by the name Nixon Korir. So even this time round, had ODM brought someone whom the electorate are unable to trust, I am certain that ODM would not have bagged that seat. The fact that Jalango got this seat, to a large extent, is on account of his own personal charisma and charm in relating to the electorate. And I don't think that him appearing to even have a consultation meeting with the president should be construed as a betrayal.
All right, but what do you say of orange waves and yellow waves and waves and waves and waves, party waves? You know, and we look at Central Kenya, people said they voted yellow.
But even before I go to the waves, Olive, ODM is a party that has supposedly been the vanguard of democracy. Then it must also be remembered that in this country, all of us have been hearing of the dark days of Nyayo or the dark days of Moi. So the question is it that people of this country fought Moi because they themselves lacked an opportunity to do these very things they are accusing President Moi of? So that I think that as a country, we should demonstrate that we are moving towards progress. that we are moving towards, you know, being a saner and a better society. Because if not, then I think the story of a gentleman called Rip Van Winkle would come into play. The story of Rip Van Winkle is that Rip Van Winkle went to the mountains, and as he was going up the mountains, he left the sign, the portrait, the sign with the portrait of King George III. So at the top of the mountain, he met pygmies who invited him to, you know, enjoy a drink with them. After the drink, this gentleman promptly fell asleep. When he woke up 20 years later, he realized that the sign that had the portrait of King George III now had the portrait of George Washington. So Rip Van Winkle had slept through a revolution. So the other question I would want to pose is that is it that the supposed vanguards of democracy slept through a revolution and they have not realized that so much has happened and we have moved from the era of King George III to the era of George Washington? Thank you.
Advice, something that Omulo has raised and now Kidi, that ODM in requiring these, quote, as Raila referred to them, traitors, to resign. Is it failing to uphold the democratic principles for which it claims to be defender?
First of all, I know very little about King George III that Kidi is alluding to. But then what I would say about this is, for us to grow our democracy, we must be able to understand that political parties are institutions that must be strengthened. And painting a picture as though elected leaders are in no need of political parties is to be in denial of the reality. In our democracy today, if anyone feels like they are not obligated or they do not agree with the ideals of a political party, they have the right to run as independent candidates. Jalango did not run as an independent candidate. Therefore, Jalango is a member of parliament on the ODM ticket. And therefore, we cannot divorce the two. Jalango is there because of partly ODM. That is the reason he was their candidate. And therefore, for us to move and be progressive, we cannot be able to advocate that you get elected and then you do whatever you want because it is within your purview and you have no right to respect political parties. There is a reason the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties allocates funds to political parties, because parties are owned by the people. Now, the people who elected Jalango elected him partly because of the ideals that he believed in, which were ODM. There are people who went to their booth because they were voting a government that ODM was in line of forming. And therefore, coming out and then saying that, that I will not be able to respect the party because I was elected by some independent people who do not agree with the party, that is very wrong. If Jalango and any other member of parliament did not want to agree with the dictates of a political party, they had the purview to go it alone and run entirely as independent candidates. So there is no relation. Whether my brother Kidi comes up with another King George, it cannot be able to change the reality that when you're elected on a political party, you must be able to uphold the dictates of that party. But that also means the party must also not be able to cage you too much that you are not able to then deliver for your people. But then saying that we don't need the party, I think that one I do not agree with. If anyone does not need the party, you go it independent.
And I think my brother Mundalo and the chairman of one of the big parties in Azimio must appreciate this, that when I am narrating the story of Rip Van Winkle, I am not being simplistic, as he's trying to put it, that people do not need the party. But that should the party be so dictatorial that these people have not, I mean, we see the party leader calling them traitors and actively advocating that they are kicked out of a meeting. What happened to principles of natural justice? Why can't these people be given a chance? Jalango was there. Why wasn't he given even a chance to narrate his story to fellow leaders who are present at Stoniathi? This is the parties that we must begin to inculcate, and parties that are demonstrating that they're thriving on dictatorship are on the wrong side of history, I'm afraid.
All right, Omulo, I'm looking at some of these tweets in response to that State House visit. James Orengo, who is the governor CIA, we disassociate ourselves with a visit to State House Nairobi by a group of ODM MPs. The visit by the MPs was personal and not sanctioned by any of our official ODM party organs. A press release of Anyang' Nyong'o's here. He is the governor Kisumu. I am not surprised that an amalgam of self-seeking MPs went to State House without the blessing of our progressive party, the Orange Democratic Movement. Should Omulo, a member of Kenya Kwanza, have done the same thing, make a political move without the blessing of the party leadership, that is in this case President William Ruto, would he have tolerated it?
Which move? Because I don't see anything that Kenya Kwanza will get from the opposition. But you see, we should not, just like what advisor said, cage politicians.
No, I'm asking if the shoe, perhaps you haven't understood my question, if the shoe was on the other foot, if members of Kenya Kwanza met with Raila Odinga, let's say Raila Odinga was a president that William Ruto did not recognize.
If you say so, you see,
would William Ruto have tolerated the quote insubordination?
I can tell you for a fact that William Ruto has changed the narrative and the style of politics in this country, to the extent that we've been discussing issues and their agenda as opposed to discussing the politics of dictatorship. And that's why you can see, even in UDA or Kenya Kwanza, leaders have the freedom of expression and freedom of movement, because the agenda of this country is about development. If at all leaders are lobbying for development, that should be the agenda. Agenda should be about the people. It should not be about the leaders. Actually, we should change our politics. Our politics should not revolve around personality. Even if we needed political parties, but it should not be used to blackmail and even push leaders or even coerce them to the extent that they are not even supposed to associate or even express their views because they have to get a permission from other leaders. This is a practice that has been done, or that is it is a practice in ODM. ODM has been a party whereby if you have that ticket or you're given that ticket, first of all, to get that ticket you need either to lobby perfectly or you are in good books with the owner of the party. If you're not, because I've never seen democracy in ODM when it comes to nomination. So that's the way it starts. So let us create an environment for these leaders to operate smoothly, because then how will we enhance freedom of expression or freedom of association if we are intimidating leaders from associating with other leaders? So whatever Nyong'o is doing, and even Orengo, the other day they were meeting these leaders, the cabinet secretary, they were meeting the president at State House. So it's just hypocrisy that they feel that they are holier than thou, that the other leaders, members of parliament, should not meet the president, but them, they are supposed to meet the president because they are governors. So to that extent, I believe that the main agenda of Kenya Kwanza, or the focus of the opposition, should be to oversight the government. The government should put agenda of development to the people, and that should be the focus. We should not deviate from development agenda. Okay. In fact, that is what I can say.
I know Orengo received Ruto when he was in Nyanza, but has he gone to State House? I don't believe he has.
Orengo did. Actually, Nyong'o, I've seen pictures in that regard. They met.
State House,
they met the president,
okay,
and even the cabinet secretaries, following up on the development agenda that Ruto promised in Nyanza. In fact, it's not a crime.
In State House Nairobi. Did I miss that one, Kiddy? Did I miss that meeting?
You might have, but then we must take notice of the fact that Omulo was a very senior and devoted member of the ODM before he apparently saw the light. And if an alligator comes out of the water and tells you that the crocodile is sick, I don't think you'd want to doubt him. Thank you.
didn't see that one coming. All right. So Siasa, Kini, my question is to you next. Is from the front page of the Star. This is what they're asking. Winds of change. Is Raila losing grip on Nyanza or just hot air? And then I can see down here, quote, traitors of the struggle. Ruthless Raila turns the heat on self-seeking party turncoats. Is this evidence that Raila is losing grip? That visit to State House?
Let me first start by quoting Bob Marley, that you can fool some people sometimes, but you can never fool everybody all the times. The Luo, what I would call the Luo nation, and with a lot of respect, I'm saying a lot of respect because I have not believed in the Luo nation and the Luya nation and Kikuyu nation, because I believe that as a country, we can forge one indivisible unit called Kenya. But so back to the Luo nation thing is that for a long time, the Luos have been in pursuit of presidency, from the days of Jaramogi all to the 2022 general elections. And all those that have come out and they've supported with their everything have failed to deliver. I will tell you that in 2018, on March the 9th, a lot of people in Luo Nyanza were disappointed with what then became famously referred to as the handshake. The disappointment was because of the level of ruthlessness that the state security apparatus visited on the populace of that region. There was a legitimate expectation that there would be an attempt to compensate the people, to make the people heal. But you see, when a political settlement was arrived at, people were left with their own devices. You remember Baby Pendo and the mother being paraded, used as a political cannon fodder during Boma's process, not Boma's, I mean the BBI process, when people were meeting at Boma's. And so yes, then go to the second thing of party primaries in Nyanza region. You remember that you are, my brother here, Mundalo, is speaking about how glorious a party can be. Yes, there are instances where parties have, formed waves in certain regions, and as long as you have the ticket of that party, you are almost assured of being, having won the seat. So in Luo Nyanza, then what do? We take nomination fees from aspirants. We subject them to, a lot of, running around. These people campaign very hard expecting a nomination. Then what happens? So you are told, Mundalo, you are not running. We have given Omulo the ticket. So a lot of people are disappointed. So as we speak, we have a restive Luo Nyanza backyard. And to answer the question more directly, is Raila losing the grip of Nyanza? I wouldn't say yes, but I would say that the region is more restive than any other time in history. Thank you.
All right. And I'll ask the same question of you, advice. If you look at some of the images that came out of State House with regard to that meeting, and I'm just trying to pull them up, and these are the ones of Jubilee coming just a day after those Nyanza leaders met with President William Ruto and DP Rigathi Gachagua. How far? Here we go. Found them. All smiles, handshakes, although we're told there'll be no handshakes. I'm trying to find the one of Jalas with the president and the DP. Anyway, as I find that, Kimani Ichung'wah yesterday conveniently pointed out or dropped a bombshell that even Kisii ODM leaders have requested a meeting with the president. Do you buy the argument that these meetings are really about development?
As I started off, those meetings, I perfectly disagree with the notion of them being about development. And as my brother Kidi puts it, you know, you have to understand, Olive, that what Kidi is not telling us, that both he has talked about Omulo, but even Kidi is an immediate former member of the ODM party, and that's
it is the CAN, immediate former member of CAN,
and that's why when he talks, he says we gave party tickets wrongly. But that as it may, these meetings are purely political whippings. But then we must also look at the reasoning behind some of these legislators. What I do not agree with in Azimio, being part of Azimio myself, is that when we fail to organize our troops, then somebody will. We cannot be able to let our legislators hang and then rush to whip them when they make such decisions. Because we must start by having an in-house conversation, because most of these legislators are actually hanging. They're not very sure of what is our plan going forward and what exactly are we really engaging them on. And that's why, because we are not doing this, somebody is taking advantage of that and whipping them politically towards their direction. Something I totally do not agree with, because you are elected on the premise of a party. Both ODM and Jubilee legislators, they were elected on these parties. The people that elected them because they believed both in their agenda and the agenda of the party. The only way for you to change that is for you to go back to those same people and consult with them and tell them, I do not agree with this now, and therefore, why can't I seek fresh mandate? That is what is provided for in our law. You go back to those people who elected you, you provide the new party that you now want, and then you get elected on it. But when such things that are happening now continue, one, our institutions in political parties continue to weaken. Two, our democracy becomes very destabilized, because look at it now. We are now having a parliament that is almost as it stands now, I think it's almost 60–70% Kenya Kwanza aligned. So you wonder then, who will really be able, will the legislators come out wholesomely in parliament to check the government agenda? Because what they are supposed to be doing in parliament is not to support the government, is not to be in bed with the executive, but to oversight. That is their principal work. But now we are having a situation whereby parliamentarians are now, all of them going and having these political whippings, and then now being in bed with the executive, and then we wonder as a people, did we elect them to do this? And then what becomes of the reason why we elected them? But that, as I continue to say, be that as it may, we must be able to organize our legislators well enough, give them a very clear agenda that they are pushing and a very clear agenda that we are working towards, so that they do not become vulnerable to being politically whipped easily. We cannot rush to punish them when they make the mistake, when we didn't give them the plan in the first place.
All right, but let me ask you this. Omulo raised this. He said, you know, if an MP was to meet a cabinet secretary with regard to a problem in their constituency, in this case, Jalas's argument is that if I remember correctly, what Kimani Ichung'wah said yesterday is that all the constituencies have TVET institutions. Lang'ata's is the one which is not yet complete. The president pledged 50 million to get it off the ground. So if Jalas was to meet with the CS, who is in charge of TVETs, let's say education, right? Yes. Was to meet with the CS education, would there be a problem there?
There is absolutely not, because you see, members of parliament are supposed to, they are part and parcel of government, and they are supposed to deliver to their people whichever way.
So what is wrong if he meets the president?
But then the question, remember I said it is not wrong for members of parliament to have meetings with the president, the deputy president, cabinet secretaries, whichever. But my problem is that this tag of development is just a tag being used, but most of these meetings are not on any developmental basis. They are actually political whippings, and therefore development is just some adjective that is being used to try and shield these meetings. The reality of it is that they are actually being politically whipped to the other side of government. And that is where the problem is.
All right, I understand you. Omulo, why is it necessary, just to pull up our poster again, why is it necessary for these leaders in the opposition to kiss the ring?
Actually, before I answer you, I wanted to react to some of the sentiments made by my good friend, who is the leader of the Jubilee Party. You know, what we must accept, that we have a disorganized opposition and an organized government. Why do I say so? When you look at the plan and how Ruto is doing his things, he's been meeting his members of parliament, the PG, more often. And if you look at the opposition, the members of parliament are only whipped only when there is an outcry, or maybe when a leader crossed the other side or met the president. So first of all, you have to meet your people, give them the agenda, talk to them so that you are in the same page. Some of them have been asking. Kenyans went to election on 9th August 2022, and they did their part and gave us the opportunity to represent them. Right now, it is our responsibility as leaders now to advocate and lobby for them for development, because that chapter is closed. When you talk about picketing, which is a right in the Constitution, and the agenda of whistleblower and all these other stories that are baked and meant for political mobilization, you are not told the agenda. You don't know the way forward or the end of it, the tail of it. How then do you support that such kind of idea? Olive, there is a story of about 4 people. Just to justify why the opposition is disorganized, there is a story about 4 people. That is the everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There is a job a very important job that was supposed to be done, and everybody thought that this job can be done by anybody, and then somebody would not do it, and they blame it on everybody, because that job was supposed to be undertaken by everybody. So the blame game within the opposition is a tactic that they don't see the light. They are not organized. They don't know what they want. And therefore, if you look at the analogy of this everybody, somebody, and anybody, everybody is ODM. ODM is everybody. And that's why they talk anyhowly, they use gunship, this intimidating tactics. And then somebody is Wiper, because Wiper, you look at how Kalonzo is talking, is talking nicely, but is not sure whether whatever they are doing, it does not believe in the cause of Azimio. And then anybody is the Jubilee Party. You've seen their members already have shifted allegiance because they don't believe anymore in Jubilee. Already Jubilee is dead. But I can't say that because his also leader is still there in Jubilee. But they no longer have members. So if they cannot bring their leaders together so that they can share the same agenda, then it would be very difficult, because the President of the Republic of Kenya cannot refuse to see a leader who has called on him. He is a leader, and those people are also elected. And then nobody is NAC Kenya, because you see they don't have any representation. So these are just political platforms that are meant to whip emotions and even revive. And I believe the gods are against these people, because if in any case, or indeed the president is meeting these leaders based on development, because I've not seen, the law is very clear that if you are not supposed to advance, or even you're not supposed to be deemed to be admiring or selling the ideology of another party. But I didn't see Jalang or even these leaders talking about UDA. What they talked about is development. These people are paid. These people have heavy packs. Actually, they are benefiting a lot from government. So I don't see them being petty to the extent that they can be bought. So if a leader has called on the president and they're meeting at State House, I don't see anything wrong with that. So I don't see where there is they should relax and talk about issues that will help Kenyans, because right now economy is hurting. There are a lot of people who are suffering, that they need to align themselves with the agenda of Kenya Kwanza government. And that is why Kenya Kwanza government is not about what is happening in opposition. Our focus is about the agenda, the plan that Ruto talked with the people in the economic forums, that is focusing in implementing. And I can tell you for a fact, so far so good, because the economy has already started to stabilize. If you look at the inflation rate already.
Umulo, I have 2 minutes before I go on break. Yeah. So let me just allow Kidi to weigh in on something. Kidi, when I was listening to Raila Odinga yesterday, he talked about political prostitution. right? And he talked about these meetings signaling an attempt to return to single-party dictatorship, because if parliamentarians, MPs are all on one side, that is how he views it, an attempt to return us to single-party dictatorship. And so he called on his legislators to, quote, stand up and be counted on the right side of history. And he said if we can't depend on our legislators, he said that is why they're doing these consultative forums, because then it comes down, in his view, to the people. Power to the people. Should we be worried? Does it send the wrong message?
I think it does send the wrong message. And what exactly sends the wrong message, in my view, is the bastardization we have done on the 7 legislators, and secondly, how we have come out, and when I say we, I mean how the opposition has come out to mobilize the citizenry against the government, a mobilization that I want to believe is premature. When I
asked, does it send the wrong message, I meant the recruitment of opposition, if that's what we should call it, into government. Into government.
I will say this, that I didn't agree entirely with the defection of UDM from the Azimio, because the way they defected now fits, in my view, fits the classical definition of political prostitution, because they had just been elected, and then when the president was declared, then they shifted. So they come off as opportunists. In regards to the 7 MPs, and you know, I am speaking about the 7 because they come from my backyard. Jalango, there is Jared and Nyamita from Migori, and all those MPs. So that the mere fact that these 7 MPs went to meet the president in State House, then an entire party with its machinery comes out, guns blazing, condemning them, I think now that in itself sends a wrong signal. But we must also not act as if the Jubilee regime, I mean the UDA regime is angelic, because I think that they did not conduct themselves very well when they took the 10 MPs. But then it is the art of politics.
All right. So it's not a threat. You don't view it as a threat to our democracy.
It is a threat to democracy to this extent. To the extent that UDM has got a pre-election agreement, and then immediately the president is declared, and I don't think the president treats those people with respect, because William Ruto is a man who has fought his way up, so he knows the value of fighting for whatever you have. But then when these people, after being elected, jump ship and join the government, or supposedly the government, of course they booed the Kenya Kwanza numbers, even in parliament. That I thought was wrong. But you see, but then there is also the issue of the 7 MPs. So there are 2 issues that we must be able to distinguish. So that an MP, say, having a sit down with the president, is not something we should castigate. But then there is, we even, before these elections, we went ahead and amended the Political Parties Act. So that unless there is a clear demonstration that maybe an MP, say like Jalas, has defected, to this extent, I am still waiting to be shown something that Jalas has done that demonstrates that he has defected.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We need to take a break. We'll come back. When we come back with this question: who's fooling whom? Gentleman in question, Fred Matiang'i. But as to your contribution on defections, Raila talked about how it was UDM. You've given us that example, how legislators, or rather how parties who had who are part of Azimio switched immediately. Yes. He said even before the speaker was elected. We take a break. We come back with this.
has no doors or windows?
I think it's a staff room because it has more things occupied.
I think it's an egg because it doesn't have any openings.
And you're beautiful just the way you are.
So this is the sushi chef. 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 So this is the sushi chef.
He's action packed and sister challenge. Looking dog for living hard. Triple cloning. T-Rexing. Royal throning. Johnny Xing. You never know what's coming next. Cause it's Johnny.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Your foreign minister, we had all the contacts around the world. He's killed in a casual way, in a very brutal way like that.
Face remained intact. To the forehead, to the jaws, you could identify the person, and the rest of the body was gone.
It made us also to be very mean with information, and even as I'm talking to you, I'm very mean on the information, simply because someone may take me to court.
There has been no government interested. There's no political will. They could be invested. Even now, criminal things don't die just like that. They live forever until they are sorted out.
In your paper this week, where is our pay? Morale dips as Somalia peacekeepers demand salary arrears amid preparations to wind up mission. Papal visit. Pope Francis avoids thorny issues in DRC and Juba. Outlook. Hungry mouths. The irony of feeding Africa's starving millions. Plus our opinion leaders. Somalia is not just applying to join EAC, it is being invited in. Charles Onyango Obo. We the people, not just media, should query leaders on taxes. LC Eakuze. Kampala authorities are lucky now that serial litigant Mabirizi is in jail. Joaquim Buembo. For these and more stories, get your copy of the East African.
My name is Sogoti James, General Manager Commercial, Nation Media Group. I'm excited with the forthcoming Season 2 of Man Cave. Finally, men's conference come in the name of Man Cave to discuss the plight, opportunities, strengths, challenges of the man and their real place in society to transform and offer great solutions for the men and the bigger society as it were. This time it will be held in Tigoni, and I will be attending the event, and we invite all men who think their place of prosperity is here. And now let's come and celebrate.
Claiming your assets is easy. Simply visit UFAA website www.ufaa.go.ke or dial *361# or visit Huduma Center near you.
All right, welcome back to AM Live, and we're getting to the reported police raid on Matiang'i's home. Lots of comments coming out of Twitter here, but just to set the record straight, Advice has taken exception to Omulo's statement that Jubilee has no members. By virtue of his being here, he is a member. All right, so Cornelius Utwi says Deputy Jesus is now showing his true colors. I see Daniels here says what goes around comes around. It's payback time. Then somebody quoting Fred Matiang'i. This is Gideon, who says, Fred Matiang'i, 2021 wise words, the police have all the rights to search every house and to arrest any individual they believe has committed a crime. Let us not politicize the work of our police officers. He's quoting Fred Matiang'i there. Scrolling through, I see up here, Aspel who says unajifanya kutokumbuka ya uhuru. I saw somebody else also say they don't like the focus on the Moi era, and people don't talk about the quote atrocities committed under the handshake regime. We see this Olepe Kiro. We didn't see that during Moi era because we were young, but we saw so many of this during Uhuru Raila fake handshake era. This is what he thinks. Where was this loud mouth then, or she was part of the system? Okay, I don't know who he's referring to. I hope it's not me. Let's see. How can William Ruto listen to advice, of irrational, quote, miniatures like Itumbi to violate the constitution on the platform of Christianity? Chief Bwana says for Matiang'i to think that life was going to be normal after those excesses he did at the Ministry of Interior is laughable. Whether Ruto or Raila presidency, they were coming for him. Harvest time. And then Fundi Wastima says about time he repays. Then Dibosti says March's power is impermanent. I don't advocate for revenge. Two wrongs. Mr. President working, who is not happy apart from the small group of tribal individuals. Ndirangu Masharia says media has no business as to how police should carry their mandate. You have no idea why police were at Matiang'i's home. Just the other day, a special unit were at the most powerful man on earth, Joe Biden's home, for security search. I think that was a search for confidential documents by the FBI. And then Edwin, this one I was talking about, Edwin Namutali says, I hate it when people say Moi era and ignore the recent acts in handshake regime. Let's see. I just want to get through the comments and then we can get into the conversation. Momanyi says he planted this seed. He is reaping it. And then if you're claiming no witch hunt, why are the guilty being acquitted? That is George. And then Jambu says, I suppose the question at the heart of the matter is, are you sure there was a raid? Question at the heart of the matter. Petero says, why aren't there any photos or videos on this story? Looks suspicious to me. Eric says, does the law only apply to Matiang'i? Many are arrested at night, so what is the big deal? But we have here Benso who says, two wrongs don't make a right. However, you don't need to go back to the Moi era. Just look from 2018 to 2022. MPs were being threatened because of supporting a proposed bill. And then the last Don asks, who said police were planning to arrest Matiang'i? If they want, he can be arrested anytime. But in this case, there's too much ado about nothing. Solomon says, start with the Uhuru government. Don't jump to Moi. All right, I will... Let me see. Let me just take 2 or 3 more. Frederick Mwangi says, all these people crying that Matiang'i's home was raided at night must have just moved to Kenya from outer space. They seem to have been blind when this was the norm barely a year ago and nobody said anything. This confirms where their loyalty lay and still lies. Absurd. Magneto Chepkulgong says most of media guys are clueless. These are just speculations. No pictures or footage to support these allegations. James says Azimio staged all this so as to have an agenda for discussing in tomorrow's rally, so the rally today. Wait, you'll see. This is what they'll talk about almost the whole day. If not, then why didn't we see photos of the police? Masai Mark says, where is the evidence of this raid? Azimio are so desperate to create narratives, it's beyond repair. Masai Marx also goes on to say, Githeri Media, not even one clip. Thomas Zalendo asks, so what was Matiang'i's crime? Gideon asks, was it not a skit? Then Mercy Mburu says, main reason we stopped watching main media. Hearsay. But I'm glad you're watching NTV though. All right, I will leave it at that and look at a few others later. But Kiddy, kick us off on this one. What do you make of the events of Wednesday night? I had done the news. I got home and I looked at my phone and I saw Jeff Koinange was reading the news on Citizen, and he was interviewing deputy governors, and he said we have breaking news, and we go to Karen and we see Dan Stan Omari speaking and claiming they had 200 lawyers surrounding Matiang'i's home. I thought that was a bit of hyperbole. Then I saw Raila Odinga speaking. I did see police officers, though, although I wasn't on ground. My colleague Helen Naura is on, who was on ground. But what do you make of these events?
Permit me a chance to respond to this comprehensively, that the Kenya Kwanza government is barely 6 months in office. If you take a chance to read political biographies around the globe, leaders will tell you that when a new administration comes to office, sometimes it takes up to 1 year for the policy changes they've put in place to begin showing results. The Kenya Kwanza government came into office against the backdrop of the support of the people at the base of the pyramid. I will tell you that I've had a chance to look at the Kenya Kwanza manifesto vis-a-vis the policy formulations that the government is doing, and you realize that the president, this administration finally seems to be getting it right. There seems to be the problem of high taxes now, but you realize that every time economy is in a tailspin like it has been, what the government does is that you visit pain in the short term so that the economy stabilizes, and then there is recovery. Moi did it with during liberalization, when there was aid freeze, and after the liberalization, during the structural adjustment program, there was pain that was visited, and then afterwards the economy was able to take off. But then we also have to look at it through the prism of the forces, especially the political forces that this administration are up against. This administration is up against the forces that have had their full time dipping their hands at the cookie jar, because we have seen how private interests were merged with public interests. So some of the changes, policy changes that this administration has put in place is going to disrupt those economic and personal interests that were intertwined with the interest of the state. And therefore, as I mentioned here last week, that political mobilization in this country is done on the basis of ethnic siege mentality. Because we've seen how the Luos are being incited that the government is illegitimate, that there is a whistleblower, the next best thing is that they want to make sure that they lock Nyanza and behind them. So what do? That they tell us that Matiang'i is almost being arrested. But even if Matiang'i were to be arrested, what is the problem? Remember, this is the gentleman who bombed the house of Miguna. This is the person who was shuffling Dr. David Ndii across the country. This is a person who defied several court orders. And this is a gentleman who, in his infinite wisdom or lack of it, said that there is no problem, that the police can arrest anyone and search anyone. So I think, my hunch tells me that to disrupt what the government is doing, there is an attempt to create ethnic siege mentality. One, to create an uprising against the government. The people saying that this government is not doing this and that. The high taxes that everyone has been lamenting about is in part because of the economic mismanagement of the yesteryears, and now it is coming to the fore. All economists in this country agree. Ask any respectable economist, they will tell you that economically we're doing so bad that for up to 3-4 years, this government is going to just be kicking the can down the road in trying to figure out how to stabilize the economy. My brother has rightly pointed out that the inflation rate is already reducing. So, in a nutshell, I think that what was called siege, I am not convinced there was a siege, but instead I think they wanted to create an ethnic siege mentality. You've heard Baba saying that next week they will be in Kisii. How timely.
They'll be in Busia on Sunday, Kisii on Monday, Narok Friday and Saturday.
That immediately after the said siege, then they are rushing to Kisii. Thank you.
Advice?
I think Kidi has done a good job in politicizing this whole matter. and throwing it out of context. First of all, before I even respond to this Matiang'i issue, I will not forget to tell my brother Omulo that Jubilee is not dead. And him saying that only myself and my SG Kioni are the only members of Jubilee is very wrong. Jubilee is very alive, and that is why the president is interested in meeting our MPs and such. Jubilee, as it stands now, is the third largest party in Kenya, way above ANC. You should remember Omulo is actually in ANC and not UDA. If the president were to meet his members of parliament, it would just be a round table discussion of about 6 people. Now, be that as it may, now when you come to the Matiang'i issue, one part of the divide must be telling a lie and the other one must be telling the truth. When this siege happened at night, we saw a lot of celebration from the supposed Kenya Kwanza side of supporters. We saw them tweet and say the law is now catching up with Matiang'i. We saw them say that what goes around now comes around. And then in the morning, they quickly retract and say there was no siege. So you then are at a position of wondering what exactly happened, because at one point they really celebrated it.
Who for instance?
We had people like Dennis Itumbi tweeting and saying the law is catching up. We had Honorable Cherargei saying the law is finally catching up with these people. So this is what they said at night. But then in the morning, the thing changed wholesomely. But with that as it may, what I would want us to look at deeply is what happens when there is a transition in this country. We must run away from this narrative and this concept where every time there is a new regime, we must be able to see these kind of happenings. We must be able to see this kind of intimidations. What would look like a revenge of some sort, and what now everyone is calling what goes around comes around when it has gained momentum. What the Kenya Kwanza administration forgets is that as it comes around for the Jubilee administration that was in government, it will also come around at some point after the Kenya Kwanza administration. We must be able to look at, to get to a position in this country where we have integrity in leadership. That one regime will finish and another one will take over and will not see this. I don't mean to say that we are not supposed to go after those who made mistakes. But if we are supposed to do that, then the government is supposed to do that within the dictates of the law. And that way we will not be having these revenge missions every time. We saw that the Kenya Kwanza administration led by the president started this purge on taxpayers. And the tax conversation went about discussing the family of former President Uhuru Kenyatta, and this was being done in churches and being made extremely political. I would appreciate it if this would be done by the bodies that are mandated to do it. Like if there is somebody who has not paid their tax obligations, would see KRA be able to do a demand letter to that effect. If Matiang'i has done something that is wrong, we should be able to see investigation and him being summoned by the EACC or whoever that would be, instead of politicizing this whole matter and creating drama about it. Because the more the drama you create around an issue, the more it becomes more political than realistic. And that is what we are faced with today. So we are in this position where we don't know exactly what happened at Matiang'i's house, but we also do not want to believe that leaders of the standing of Raila Odinga would wake up from their sleep to just go and witness a skit or something that is actually not there. I doubt, I wouldn't want to believe that that people of the stature of Raila Odinga would be involved in such kind of a shenanigan. So, but then, as we continue to make the drama out of this, can't the Kenya Kwanza administration, in obeying what they said by themselves, that they are going to be a very different kind of regime, that they are going to be an administration that upholds the rule of law, in the words of the president himself. Why can't we be able to see this happening in accordance with the rule of law? Let us reduce the drama and increase the rule of law, so that if someone has made a mistake, let us not see a lot of dramatization around the issue. Let us see government institutions. If it is tax, let us see KRA respond to that. If it is corruption, let us see the EACC respond to that. If someone is supposed to be arrested or something, let us see the Inspector General take account of this, instead of creating a lot of drama around an issue and creating a lot of tension in the country and making the issue more political than it really is.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me say something, Willie.
1 second. I've scrolled Itumbi's posts on Twitter. I haven't seen celebration, but I have looked through Cherargay's, and he did tweet, Matiang'i used to order my arrest at night, was detained at Capitol Hill Police Station and later Gigiri Police Station, despite up to following Monday, despite court orders to the contrary. What's so special about him? Bado Safari Nimbali, Alambe Glucose. Money laundering, abuse of office, and corruption is punishable in Kenya by law. Tinga should know that. I want to invite Omulo to comment.
Let me say something. That when we were young, we used to think that our parents knew everything. When we came of age, we realized that there were just so much they knew, and there are also things they did not know. There was a time we used to think that Baba knew everything. He was, you know, a near deity status.
Who is we?
He had a near deity status. Chances are Baba is a mortal man of flesh and blood. He could have been blindsided into this. So the fact that Baba was there does not now indicate that indeed there was a raid. Something I wanted to inform my brother about. Secondly, I hope we get a chance to speak about the crowding out of private sector in the banking and how that could have ramifications of why people may want to speak about the former first families, to speak about the former first family. Thank you.
All right. Omulo, this is what the Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki had to say on the subject. No police officers or any security agent from government institution or department was dispatched to the home of Dr. Matiang'i to arrest, harass, or otherwise interfere with his constitutional rights in any manner whatsoever. The alleged invasion of the home by some unidentified persons who lawyers and some politicians alleged were police officers sent to arrest him is utterly false. We saw the DCI issue a statement yesterday. We saw the Inspector General of Police issue a statement yesterday. We saw the EACC distance themselves from said raid. What do you make of these events? Advice talked of dramatization.
Yes.
Kimani Ichung'wah said that if they want to dramatize things, there is the Kenya National Theatre.
Yes. First and foremost, allow me to say that ANC party is a very strong party with strong ideologies and with good brains. I've never seen in our strategic plan where we have allocated funds to buy soforias. But be that as it may, you see, what happened in Matiang'i's home is drama. In fact, it's a script that is well done by certain quarters. And we say that Matiang'i is running away from his own ghosts. Actually, he's being chased by his own shadow. He must be having so many skeletons in his closet that is about to rupture. And I believe it is just lack of ideas and lack of innovation from the opposition, because the skit was done to whip emotions and also to incite certain region, part of this country, which Ruto has been working so hard to unite this country. But it's very unfortunate that they had to bring the former Prime Minister as a way. You know, there's a part in the script when you're doing drama where you reach a level, you need a character that is so big to the extent that it will be a breaking news. So they disturbed Baba and woke Baba very early in the morning, actually at late night, just to break the news. So we know it was politics. And in Kenya Kwanza, as personally, I like watching movie, especially Nigerian movie, whereby you die even before you are shot. So, you know, Matiang'i died before he was shot. So, we should take this should not be taken seriously. He should be, we should take it with a pinch of salt. But I think there was an intention by some, you know, members of parliament from Kisii County, which had planned to meet the president. And at that rate, the opposition had seen that members are moving so fast on the other side, and they had to do something. You know, when you create such a scenario and you whip emotions in that region, you prevent those people from, you know, meeting the president, because they will fall. People will actually, you know, blame them for what happened to Matiang'i. So it is none of our business. It's not at least in our priority. Actually, the Kenya Kwanza government is focused so much on development agenda, how we can resuscitate this economy and put it in the right trajectory. We cannot, you know, forget about chasing the antelope and, you know, start chasing a squirrel. You know, it's not making sense to us. So what happened to Matiang'i is not here nor there. And I challenge advice. Why can't they produce video or even photos? When Rigathi Gachagua was raided, we saw the pictures of police officers. When Ndindi Nyoro was arrested, we saw the pictures of police officers, whether in uniform or not in uniform. When Miguna was raided, we saw the police officers, both in uniform or not in uniform.
They were not in uniform.
Even in Malala scenario, Malala was arrested, and we saw all those people. We have not even seen anything near. We saw a soldier, actually, I think that is what they were calling elite squad. But we have not seen, even internal, even outside, we have not seen anybody that resembled a police officer. So I think it is lack of ideas that they should not go to that extent and take Kenyans around, because Kenyans are no fools. They know what is right and what is wrong. And sometimes we also want to urge our the fourth estate members to be keen when they are writing stories and also investigate, because it is a character of our leaders in the opposition that they are developing to create a scenario that will, you know, divide this country. But it is very unfortunate. I can say we are sorry for them. If that is how they are going to do their politics, then we will help them do that, and we will watch the movies.
All right, and I'll give you gentlemen a minute each to wind up. I just want to go through some comments. We have Victor Ogodo, who says, with regard to the Nyanza leaders meeting President William Ruto, what if Raila is the one who met the president? Would he be a traitor too, or is he the exception? I see here a comment by, who is it, Nikki, saying you can't beg in the name of lobbying. There are MPs who appropriate the budget in parliament and not state house. So he's saying it is MPs who appropriate the budget.
No, that is what we call conventional thinking.
In parliament, not in state house.
Conventional thinking.
All right. Musao says in development and mature democracies, you can't do what Jalango and others didn't survive, and others didn't survive. I vote for a leader and they change party, then my vote should be deducted from the total votes they got. I vote for a party. Let us see here. I think one more, and then I'll give you a minute each. Pius Okero says, let him resign and come back with UDA. That is Jalango, if he's man enough. All right, your last remarks, advice. Or your advice.
I think within my final remark, I would still want to insist that we should not be able to make a little thing out of what is being said about what happened at Matiang'i's house. It is important that this is really investigated and the truth comes out, because as I started, both sides, someone must be telling the truth, because you can't celebrate at night, then in the morning run away and start saying nobody was there. We have seen situations in this country where people have disappeared and there was no clip of any police officer. We have seen situations where people's houses have been bungled and there were no clips of these police officers. So sometimes when governments want to do something, they do not really need to do it a very conventional way. But be that as it may, again, opposition should not be able to take people through any circus for that matter. But again, now as what I would simply want to urge government, because we have a government today, the government will only become better and the lives of the Kenyans will only become better if government sticks to the plan. Many a times, the president in himself, in many rallies and many interviews, he said he has a plan. This is the time that people want to see him execute that plan. This is not the time that people want to see a lot of drama around government and a lot of things happening that take us away from the real issues. The raids on Matiang'i and such kind of things take us away from the real issues. The real issues today are about the cost of living of the people, the unemployment of the young people in this country. Let the president stick to this plan, because he promised us that he has a plan and he has a clear-cut agenda for this country. Okay. It is now almost 7 months down the line. We are closing the year. Apart from the Hustler Fund, I know nothing much that has been able to change the lives of of Kenyans. The petrol prices have gone high and such. So let the president stick to the plan and let us be able to see him implement this plan. Then in 2027, he'll be judged very fairly.
All right, Kidi, your last words?
As my brother Mundalo said, that at some point I belonged to the ODM. And for a long time, we believed legitimately that ODM was the vanguard of democracy. I want to advise ODM that it must treat with caution, lest it engages in the very things it accused or accuses its opponents of. It is a party that has carried aspirations of so many Kenyans for so long. Let it live to its highest ideals. Thank you very much.
All right, Omulo, your last words?
Olive, before you kill an antelope, you must have calculated the angle at which you throw the arrow. It can be 90 degrees, 80, 180, or even 360.
The spear or arrow?
Yes. The Kenya Kwanza government has taken a bold step in resuscitating this economy by doing away with subsidies. It is a tough choice, but it will enable farmers to produce food basket for this country. I believe even if you ask a first-year student, economic student, will tell you, you'd rather subsidize fertilizer as opposed to subsidizing unga, which we are not after quick fixes. But the president has taken that route to ensure that this country is very stable. And that is why I said there is a modest decrease of inflation from 9.5% to 9.1%. And I believe if you look at the supplementary budget, if you look at the cuts, it's not so much to the extent that was promised by Kenya Kwanza government. But it is an intention towards the achieving the plan of Kenya Kwanza government. So we believe, let us give Kenya Kwanza a space and time without creating, shenanigans, political of radicalization and even disruptive opposition. Let us focus on enhancing democracy, building this country, and also running away or even stopping public debt or whatever that it is called. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. With me in studio, we've had Kidi Mwaga, governance and policy expert. Mundalo M, advice. The M, he tells us, is for peace. He's the National Youth Chairman, Jubilee Mulembe. All right, we've also had Omulo Jr., Director Political Affairs, ANC. Dennis Manda was not able to join us this morning, having traveled overnight, but I believe advice held forth adequately for the Azimio coalition. My name is Olive Burrows, and I wish you a good morning. And don't forget, Omulo, what Raila Odinga said yesterday. Politics and development are intertwined.
Like an hour.
Like two mating dogs. Good morning.
Presenting the new Harpic Bathroom Cleaner. Compared to ordinary detergents, its thick formulation gives you superior cleaning and kills 99.9% of germs and viruses all around the bathroom. Blue for the toilet and red for the bathroom.
I'm Julian Samboko, Oliver Madenge,
Matthew Mbithi,
Nick Nyamori, Bigok,
James Uluoch.
I'll be attending Man Cave.
I'll be attending Man Cave.
And I'll be attending Man Cave.
And I'll be attending the Man Cave on the 25th of February at the Lake House, Tigoni. Join us.
See you then.